Women Reveal.
And this is Brenda Bates, Medicine Woman. And with me is
Jen Toffel, Medicine Woman.
Yep, time to wake up and smell the coffee and realize it's time to push record on life. So, how does one create their reality and start their day? That's what my dissertation's about, in creating reality. And what is reality? And these are all very deep questions. So, I seem to be, with my hidden talents, this magical mirror, just like we all are. And, what am I acting like today? Well, I was doing pretty good till she woke up. And this is all tongue-in-cheek, okay. So anyway, till she woke up, and it was like, I'm angry! And my reality started to change. Why? Well, one, people, any human being, if their shields are down or their aura is not appropriately balanced, or as part of the job that you have on this planet to understand, what happens is that the energy field will pick up, because we have entanglement cords, and my body will pick up in the frequencies, and I'll make the appropriate chemical peptides to give her the appropriate reaction she's looking for. Plus, being medicine women, we're always in a jam session, discovering about life and how we create it and how we react and heal to it. So, like I said, I started to notice that I'm being angry. I want to throw things around. I roughly did dishes and I'm annoyed by everything. There was this glass that fell on the floor and I was not able to pick it up because of the position it was in, so I just left it. And so did everybody else. Then I went in the bathroom, looked at the toilet, and thinking, God, nobody else can frickin' clean it but me. What else could get on my nerves today? I'm listening to my language. I'm listening to how the negativity just propels. And I'm like, seriously? Alright, fine. And then I am to observe, pay attention to her. So she's being all, cutesy, cutesy. So she's like, you know, you should give them some of your famous Mickey faces. And I'm like, she's being extra cutesy. One half, cool. Or the other half, that just makes me want to puke. So before we go any further, when you would be cutesy, when you would get up in the morning, who would be giving you the reaction that they're always angry?
I think, generally speaking, it was the household where we talk that people's positivity is really negative until they recognize that. But it was my older sister.
Okay, who thought you were disgusting when you were cute?
Oh, I'm sure that she did.
So, I am putting on my lipstick. And I finally said, okay, I'm done with this game. I want you to write down. What did I tell you to write down?
When I'm cute, people are angry.
Okay, so when she creates her day and she inserts herself in the reality with other people, what happens to her proprioception? First of all, I'll tell people what that is.
That's the way you feel your way into the environment. How am I supposed to behave? Kind of check out the vibe in the room.
The orientation of the physical self.
Okay, what's going on? Do I need to come in and placate people, and if they're really like angry and that kind of thing, or if everything's okay, then everything's okay. But then when is the tide gonna turn?
The shoe gonna drop.
Right.
Okay. So I noticed that, and so I told her. So all that reminds me of is that how I learned in my family. It wasn't until I was actually graduated high school and I was working at the drugstore and going to college. I didn't have a vehicle, and so I had to borrow my mother's. Now, she's a stickler because in the past, all the other kids had either destroyed her cards, lied to her, did something, but oh God, Brenda cannot be any different. She has to be just like them. And I got tired of proving that years ago. It's like, screw it. I'm me. You can't see that. I don't care. But I did care because it was the reaction that you always get when you get into the room. I would go to work, and then, you know, it gets out at 9. You can't leave until everybody leaves because it's a small little drugstore. So when the money went to the bank, y'all kind of traveled, not quite in packs, but to watch each other's backs.
Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes I wouldn't get out of there until 9:30, but that's usually if it was really somebody miscounted the till. That'd usually be me. But, you know, so I'd have to restart.
It happens.
You know, it happens.
That's part of the routine, is just anticipate. You knew to anticipate for that and just went with the flow.
Yeah, and so she would always say, well, what time do you get to work? I said, I would say 4 to 9. Or 5 to 9, whichever. And she'd say, oh, okay. Now, in her mind, what was she thinking, Jen?
Oh, it takes you X amount of time to get home from work, so I'm going to start anticipating you walking in the door at that time.
Exactly. Even without accounting the other factors that come into play. Okay? So now I would usually get home and I'm chippy and cheery and happy because now I've got to focus on getting my work done, you know, as far as my college work, and I just love to be happy. But after a while, it just got so much that it just sucked the life out of me. And the only way that I could survive that moment was to counteract it. Now you got to remember, this is what happens when you start doing this as a kid. Some people would answer it differently. Oh, I wouldn't do that. I would do this. And then some people would have backing and balls and, you know, and rebels. But I wasn't. I was a child that got threatened, and the fear that I abandoned standing up for my own self, where other people had the rebel. I couldn't. So I will not go into that long story, but as I start to heal this, these issues would come up to the surface. Going back to when I was working, I would get home, and sometimes it would be 20 after 9, and she would be the most angriest, negative person. Well, it took you so long. Da-da-da-da-da. She had to know the reason. She had to have that, you know. And again, it's all based on how she raised the rest of the kids. And so then I would tell her the story. But if I told her cheery, guess what? I was condemned. And I was like shot for, but if I notice if I come home and I walk in the door and I'm bitchy and I'm angry and I'm showing the same reflection of her anger that she has,
it was acceptable.
It was totally acceptable. And then I would get into the drama of the stories about how so-and-so couldn't count the till. Sometimes it's even including me, about how I'm mad and denigrate myself because how stupid I am. But it was like perfectly acceptable. That's what was, oh, she was so diffused that all of a sudden she was happy. But what the hell did it do to me? Well, I didn't realize until, you're talking back in 85, 86, and it wasn't until in 1996 that I was with my first teacher. And the first teacher in the alternative medicine and Reiki world, alternative energy medicine, whatever you want to call it. I'm sitting with her, and she says, "Oh God, please tell me you did not do that." And I didn't know what she was talking about because we didn't talk about it like what we just did. Mm-hmm. And I says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And so then she started to show me, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's what happened. She says, "Notice what you had to do. You had to kill yourself off." Meaning certain aspects of my happiness, my joy, these pieces of me were not accepted in the household. And it was not accepted in that space to survive. So in order to survive, I had to adapt to my environment and literally had to kill some parts of myself off, because by 1996, the reason that part of me found her was because I was awakening again, but I just had chronic neck pain. And it's part of sticking your neck out, and a part of using your voice. The voice of compassion was gone. The voice of compassion sits right here where the throat is, the collarbone, and the thymus. And that was basically gone. And the fifth chakra was like going, "Oh my God, what'd you do?" And I would just have nothing but notorious neck issues. And the weight of the world of always having to put on this mask. So it got to me, and I had done some retrospect and contemplating, and then realized that I don't have to have this. Now at the time, I didn't have the tools I have now. So I would use a special blend soul oils, and that I know how to make them now. And that's what I do to help people. Either the soul oils or soulpathics, which was the homeopathic. So anyway, it's part of the teachings. You consciously have to have conscious contact. What do I mean by that, Jen?
You have to understand when Brenda will say, "Do you know that you're doing this?" Nope. No idea whatsoever. That is lack of conscious contact, where she's able to pick up what I'm doing and reflect back to me. Hey, you might, so now the idea is pay attention. Oh, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, I did that thing that you were talking about, whatever it was, you know, I can't think of an example right now. I'm lacking conscious contact, which is awesome. I'm being a very
good example.
Good example. So, but you have to understand, oh, okay, this is what's going on. Now, I will then be able to take responsibility, start changing it, understand, oh, I'm doing this again. You know, and it's not just self-correcting, it's actually healing it so that it actually comes to resolution on its own. But you have to have that conscious contact. Oh yeah, she was talking about that again.
You know, and the one thing that has to be, you're the observer. Okay, you have to first remember that. You are the observer. If you focus on something too intently, you're not going to be able to see the rest because you're going to be focused on every detail. And why does well, sorry, when spirit speaks, they don't have good English. Why do people have the ability to get bad things happen to them? Because they don't know how to stop focusing. So, how do you get someone's attention? Usually you gotta, hello, wake up! Get their attention, have them stop looking over there, and then you need to look over here.
And the favorite denigrating way is, hey, dumbass, notice this.
And that's not usually
that's
how
not
to address
we
it
don't,
unless
we don't
that's the way
like,
she needs it.
Right, we
now,
don't like to talk to each other that way.
When you're becoming a spiritual human and you're learning to become the norm of the world instead of being victim of the world, and the norm is a moving target, as you had once told me from your wonderful father, that he would describe
normal is a moving target, which I always say explains a lot about him and our relationship. But anyway, so by dictionary definition, normal is an agreed upon set of social norms and so by definition society has to agree on what's normal. As we're seeing in our culture right now, a lot of things are coming to the surface to say, hey, that wasn't normal, but now it can be normal. Oh, that's not normal. So we're determining as a culture and society, hey, you know, what was different 50 years ago is now acceptable.
And what's also known as the pimp and the prostitute. These two particular archetypes have been running the world. The pimp has always been telling you what you have to think, what you have to do, live that dream, and give me the profit. You get nothing, but I get it all. And then now you're starting to see that through the explosion of the internet about how companies and corporations, we are commodities. We, just like prisoners are commodities, and certain groups that have to pay in some form, they are a commodity. If you can make money off it, then somebody else owns you.
Right, you're creating a consumer.
Yes, and so the pimp and the prostitute come into play. Now, it is all about this acceptance. What is accepted? And a lot of times the stuff is downloaded through us, and you know, yes, there's a bunch of conspiracy theories that go with it with the commercials and bombarding you. I'm writing a blog right now about how, and I don't have the information right in front of me, but how in our own government, and when you have these economists, you know, hey, this is what we need to do. We got to make people, I can't even remember the person's name right now, these people have to consume more. The only way to really, we have to make people become consumers. That's all they are. We're nothing more than but that consumer. And they convince us to say, you know what, hey, that may be new, but guess what, it's useless. And you need this new stuff. And it's not that we're brainwashed as much as it's part of that consciousness that we're not consciously being part of. We're not consciously choosing to say, wait a minute, I'm not sure if I want to do that or believe it. Now, because it's an entanglement cord to us, we sometimes will fall victim to creating chemical peptides to start acting in that manner. And you take it even further, it is your soul's acceptance that you have to undo what the soul had done, and it is perfectly a transitional thing about how you move. Because if you did it too quickly, you wouldn't believe it. So there is an actual process of how long it will take before the transition can really conspire, because you don't want to shock yourself, because that's where fear comes from. So the observer really needs to be paying attention to deciding not to feel what is happening. And I chose these words carefully because fueling. It's not that you don't accept and accept. It's not right or wrong. It's not about that. It's about the synergy. It's about unity. It's about, wait a minute, I don't like that. I mean, how I know it. On the scale of 10, I hate it. 10, and it's red. Well, that intensity of my chemical peptides reinforces and fuels to keep that alive. So instead of protesting, instead of doing these other things, I will then just start to inform, to educate. And then I will sit there and I will tap that down to 0. And because it's important to stop fueling that belief system we no longer need. We'll talk more about that when we come back after this commercial. At 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what's the date, Jen?
Thursday, January 17th.
Okay, and we're going to, for the first hour, we will be interviewing William White Cloud, and then after that, we'll be doing free readings. So let's get back to how, what we were talking about. Now, you have to understand that part of our reality is, where does it come from? You have to be responsible as that soul being, that you are the sum total of your conscious and unconscious programmings. You are in a whole, but yet quite separate. It is based on decisions that we have to our first reactions, and then it's the beliefs that we have when we collect and proof, and then it's the values. Our values is what drives and dictate who we are. But it's the emotions that we have with it. It's the intensity. It's that relationship that we have with them that causes us to act a certain way and consistently. So before we go into too much more on that, what I really wanted to talk about was that when I got up and I was fine, and when she got up I started to be angry. She wasn't near me yet. Mm-hmm. And I could feel it happening. So, did she get enough information before I tell her my observation? And that usually means about the appropriate time. How long did it take? 15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Mm-hmm. And it would be in the passing. She'd smile at me when she had her coffee. She'd walk back and forth. We would be in the kitchen the same time, and she would have to watch my behavior. She would have to learn how to react to my behavior. Now, she may not be fully know what's going on, but there's a spiritual part of her mindset that knows that something's playing out.
Right, and what's interesting is I was going against my typical wake up, oh, I'm pissed off against the world demeanor because I don't want to be that person anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have people scared of me when I wake up and, oh my gosh, Jen's up, you better watch out for a good...
And it was good and funny.
Right. And
point her to the coffee and just say, okay, I'm clear.
Go ahead. So I'm observing and healing and using meridian tapping and whatever other healing tools I need to use to be able to transform that, because that's not healthy for me or my relationships. So today was, okay, it wasn't that I was deliberate about it. It was like, oh, it's okay for me to be happy when I'm, but then it wasn't, because now the shoe's on the other foot that, okay, I'm being this, kind of funny, cute, okay, hi, ha, 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 getting up. And then what am I met with? I'm met with anger now. Well, it's like, Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you noticed it that way, because we're used to have to put up with you. You set the boundaries. Don't talk to me. Don't do this. You wait until I speak to you. You set the tone, and it's like, all right, I guess that's what we have to do. But it's not that she was doing it meanly and deliberately like some people.
Right. It was subtle.
Yes, that's the word. Very subtle. And so she got the taste of her own medicine when she came out cutesy and then I was angry. Mm-hmm. So do you like it?
No.
And so then, like I said, I'm very observant going, seriously, this isn't me, but I'm very angry. Wow. Why? When I approached her, I was putting on my lipstick, looking into our two-way mirror we have, and I'm putting it on, and I said, are we done with this yet? Have you done observing me and being in this mode, or whatever the question was? Mm-hmm. And she noticed that, yes, I see you as angry. Well, how was your reaction? Because it's very important to understand, she understands what her reaction is.
So then I became timid. I didn't want to approach the situation. I knew to back off. I knew to just walk on eggshells.
And so then, now I'm going to need your arm, that first reaction she learned by walking on eggshells, being timid inside the womb at birth, 1 to 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, less than 1 year old, 10 months. 10 months old, she learned to walk on eggshells. Okay, so now you're talking about...
I was barely walking.
Yeah, but from her 10-month-old mindset, she observed that this is what happens and that you have to stand clear because someone is taking their energy and being really physically imprinting the world. We have to back up to let you know that she has been breaking up with fear. She became best friends with fear because fear would warn her, fear would protect her. Fear. But that is not really true, but yet in a way it was. So she learned to survive when that reaction occurs. This is how she's going to have to react. To counteract her reaction, she then learned, I can be getting up angry too. Or maybe that's the way I observe and I have to be this.
Right, yeah, mimic what's in the environment because then it's that soothing that, oh, okay, you know, it's like what you were talking about with you and your mom. Mm-hmm. That, okay, now I can be in the environment.
So what's important to understand is that becoming a spiritual human, you have states of mind. You can be what some people call heaven and hell in the state of mind. The kind of state of mind I'm referring to is when you have resolved your emotional reactions and pains and sufferings, and you resolve the intensity of the emotion off of the situation, and you actually resolved it and filed it away, you become more who your true identity is instead of your over-identities. So that means you become happier. One of the things is that, okay, I'm standing there very angry. You know, all right, are we done with this? I don't want to be this way anymore. I don't like it at all. You know, and she's then's like, yeah, I says, well, you better write it down because I don't want to repeat this. Meaning, I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to participate.
And I don't want to participate in it.
Right. There was something last night, I'm like, I don't want to play. You're like, oh, what are you talking about? Because we didn't even, we brought it up, but that was it. But, so what happens is that she already knows. Okay, so first of all, let's look at in the human mindset.
The night before, I'm thinking.
Well, I'm thinking last night. The human mindset. I separate the mindsets. The human mindset minus your true identity, being in charge of helping you, is the human mindset, and you live in your over-identities. If I turned around and said that to you, and you did not know to perceive me as the spiritual soul coach. Okay.
Then you would be blaming me, telling me it's my fault.
That's how
you're causing me to be angry, and are you done? That's how I would have interpreted it had I not been in the jam session of, hey, can I stop doing this right now? Did you get one? Go write something down. Oh, okay, crap, yes, I will heal this later, I promise.
So she would first react to, oh my God, in shock, be in pain, be upset, going, oh my, you know, she literally would be taking offense, she would be feeling the pain, she would go, oh my, and then if she were trying to recover from it, she'd probably say, okay, bitch. You know, she would just literally be upset with me, but yet we have to figure out how to make it work in this relationship, in the house, and being a partner in business, and, you know, living in a copacetic oh, God, you always have to walk on eggshells. You build up all of this crap that people call life.
Right.
And I'm like, seriously, you don't have to do that anymore. So when you resolve, you evolve. So now, as I'm standing there, and it's like she knew that when I was talking angrily, but it was the language that I used. I didn't really sit there and blame her. I'd say, okay, have you learned this now? I'm done demonstrating this.
Yeah, I don't want to play in this anymore. Have you learned what you need to from it?
Mm-hmm. So there is a difference in language. There is a difference in the way of receiving it in that language. And when you start to understand the soul language, what misses is that you don't have to take offense. You're like, oh, shit. And you actually look forward to when somebody says something, you're like, that's why I was acting that way. That's why this was happening. And you learn to work that this is a journey of life and not a, oh, I'm existing in this life and this is how life is. And that just has to be pathetic, okay? You are literally choosing a different way to perceive it, to send it, and to be responsible for the energy you bring into the room. And that reminds me of what had happened to me physically. Nobody could expect it. Okay? So if from some of you, you're probably hearing the refrigerator open, bags wiggling, we want to say, "Hi, Scott!" He's home from work.
Thanks for shopping.
Yes. So put away what you need to, but please stay out of the kitchen. This is the studio, and it's in operation. And shut that door. We're freezing. Okay, now that that's taken care of. We love you. Well, I know I do. See, my body's going into reaction because I had to speak up, and he gave me a look like, I don't know how to interpret that, but my body certainly does. We were playing Mario Kart the other day, and we learned how to push the buttons just right so we all can play multiplayer mirror image, which is everything is mirrored backwards. And I thought, oh, that's funny because mirror of life. So we started out, we decided we'd do 16 in a row, non-stop, and the second race in, now I do really good. And I don't know why, but I do really good. I get a lot of times first places.
Mm-hmm.
She's over there, she becomes a Tourette's woman, which is interesting. But this time there's a difference. She hit a note that put my body in complete shock. And oh, I could feel that my limbs were like being ripped off of me. So I thought, oh my God, and I'm physically feeling all of the anxiety, all of the pain. I started to get a headache. I started to spin out. I knew I left my body. And there was just a shell sitting there that was participating automatically in this game, and I couldn't get myself back into the body. I'm like, what the hell? And all because she had screamed and hit a note that it sent me flying. And then I started, okay, so I'm playing the game, so spiritually I'm in my head like, okay, whatever. And when you go, and if you watch the videos, you'll see that along the collarbone, you have the K27, and the first point of that, underneath the collarbone, is the last point of the kidney meridian, and it is responsible to help keep all the meridians moving in the same direction. And that was sore, which means I probably was going backwards. Doesn't always mean that. And I'm like, oh my God, but I was playing Mario Kart, so I couldn't rub it. Both sides were that way. Then the next one, I think, is it goes the governing meridian, the heart meridian, and the central meridian, which goes then underneath the armpit, down the arm, right where my arms felt like they were being ripped apart. My meridians basically were obliterated, but I had no aura. My aura just completely had sucked in, and I had nothing. I was completely, oh my God. And I could not function for almost up to 2 hours. What?
You were saying, that was last night when I had...
Was it last night?
That we were playing, and then you said, oh my gosh, I'm going into a memory of my siblings and what it was like for them to be beat. So once you said that, then I understood where you were in your journey.
But I also went deeper.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So I knew that whether or not you were participating or not, I knew...
So after we were done with Mario Kart, which took an hour to play, I had to go to my office, and what was fine, the first thing I had to go in my mind to when I first heard that the shrill of that peak of that note, and it propelled me all the way back to the day I was born.
Wow.
Around me, because my mother explained when she was in the riots, or in the Detroit riots, we were in the Flint hospital, and what happened though was that there was no room for her to just give birth peacefully. She had to be in the hallway. How many victims probably were coming through with certain attitudes, with certain things? All I know is that I came into the world with that frequency, and my mother, I remember her distinctly saying she wouldn't scream. She wouldn't let out any noise, that she was in pain, because there was already too much going on around her. And all I know is that whatever the central meridian and up by the collarbone that I just explained, that apparently starts to rip apart first for my aura. Because I've been trying to keep my aura intact, and it'll be beautifully in place, and all of a sudden, gone. And when it's gone, I dawned on me that I had, the only way to correct it was that I had to go in and start working on circulation sex meridian, and then I went into the shock using hope therapy. But the main thing we'll talk about after this commercial.
what was going on with all your meridians in this area where your arms were,
Right.
and how now you're wanting to keep your aura healthy, but when something happens, it withdraws and it shuts down.
Yeah, and I cannot remember, there was something very important, but it did spark other things of what you said. When your arms are out, that's receiving energy. And basically, I just knew that I was gone. I had to focus on the, okay, so when you have an adrenaline rush, there's symptoms, correct?
Right.
Okay, when you are angry, there are symptoms, correct?
Yeah, you feel,
There is a physical reaction.
Yeah, you feel
I remember when I had to face somebody because they were accusing me of something that wasn't true, and so when I faced them off, my lips were dry. My lips were actually stuck on my gums. I couldn't speak. My heart rate was in my throat, and these are actual symptoms. The only way to really, for me to address what was happening was that I had used hope therapy, and I literally had to focus on the symptoms. Now, I know that I had a broken basic grid, which doesn't allow the energies to flow properly. And one of the major emotions that was sitting there was that intensity. We are sensory beings, and we take that for granted. We don't put two and two together. And when your central meridian, which is the first part of your egg, is gone or down, the central, the energy that's over by the armpits, that's the lymphatic, and that's just your lymph nodes. Mm-hmm. And they became really sore, as if somebody had just pulled and tug-of-warred me, and all that stuff sat there. So all those chemical peptides started to sit there. All the symptoms started to show. And I literally had to get into the symptoms and look at it through hope therapy and notice that the vulnerability was that there was nothing I can do. I was bombardedly attacked by that sound. That's why when certain people would speak, I could not help but to obey to some degree, because of the energy was just so, we are a frequency and energy. So here I am, the energy was constantly attacking and killing me to the point my body was starting to deteriorate. What happens to me? I have to figure out how to surrender, survive, do what I need to do so that energy will not be hurting me. It'll actually stop. And that's what I started to notice. So it took me like a good couple hours. I had to go work on that. That took care of the first symptom, and oh my God, the pain went away. It was just woof. Mm-hmm. It took like 10, 15 minutes, and I'm like, oh my God, thank God the pain's gone. Then it was like, okay, I'm normally thinking, but I could actually feel the next symptom that was sitting in my stomach. So I had to go work on my stomach meridian, and I started to notice that my grid, the energy, it's like, I want to say template, but it's also like your, I want to say titanium. I can't hear what they're saying. Okay, you know how you were talking about, we were talking about California and the plate tectonics. That's the word they're trying to say. And it was like mine were all shifted. Okay, I went into a visceral effect where my body distorted itself based on that particular frequency. Remember, we have 12 notes in us, and these 12 notes relate to the other 12 notes of the people around us, as well as to the 12 notes of the earth, as well as above, so below. And I had to address each of those symptoms, and then I had to go into the stomach meridian. Was, even though it was, I could feel it attack, for me it was like the expanded parts of self. But what about me? Why are you doing this to me? It wasn't all about that thinking. It was just, trying to, because the stomach is that earth element that is about the alarm. Your alarm system's off, and I had to calm that alarm system. The next thing I had to work on was the spleen meridian, and it was about how I was attacked. Now, it wasn't even at me. It was in my surroundings and how I reacted sensory system-wise to this. So that's why in my household I could never stand yelling, screaming, high intensity. I married into a family where the mother and the son had this high volume, and I'd always get stuck in the middle. Where are my earplugs? At one point my nerves were kind of shattered. that I had to wear earplugs. I could hear everybody just fine, but I toned down the intensity of the sensory system just so I could be a mother, a housewife, and whatever else I was being at the time. Because it actually drove me to where I had to wear a headset, put music. I don't listen to music because there are times that it just makes my ears throb. So sometimes I'll listen to it. And well, I had to escape all of the frequencies I couldn't run from. My system was so overloaded, I didn't have filters for it, and I'm like, oh my God. And that's when I also had, when you give birth, you have the postpartum depression. Mm-hmm. Okay, I could feel that, and I could not get my hormones back. This is way before I had healing tools. Mm-hmm. And it was just driving me crazy, and I thought, oh God, I can't do this. There's got to be an answer out there, and of course that's what led me to Donna Eden. And I just, so anyways, I've been working intently about, why, what happens to my aura? Because I had that Q-link, it was working just fine, and all of a sudden now I can't wear my Q-link, and I thought, well, why can't I wear it? Then I ended up watching Donna Eden, and she started talking about the Q-link. She had, everybody was wearing them. She was like, oh, that's cool. So she got one. She put it on, and she started getting headaches. She started having symptoms. And what it was is that her aura, she's notorious for not having an aura, started doing those kind of symptoms on her. But as soon as somebody says, take that off, it doesn't work for you, she went back to normal. And see, I've been really taking down the walls and the barriers and healing, that now it's left me with, because I had the aura pushed out to the point of, well, see, I would say it's a false aura. It wasn't even really the protective one, because you have different forms of layers that you use. So anyway, what I'm getting at is that you have to understand that these symptoms are real, and it is not just, you know, where do symptoms come from? Just because you had something happen to you, it has a lot to do with your reaction. It has a lot to do with how you observe that moment, and you created chemical peptides about that moment. You are a chemical peptide reaction, and when you can get a hold of what it is and how it is, and help it so that you don't have to be victim to it, or the what am I looking for? I guess just victim, because in the cause and effect equation, you can, most people stand as the effect, which is the victim, the ego. There is no responsibility about bringing your energy into the room. And a lot of times I get caught up in the negativity, and I understand that I'm causing her to do this. You know, would she done it on her own? Yes. Am I forcing her to do it? No. It is a part of a program that you would normally do anyway. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not something that you want to live in. No. But at the same time, I also know that, and what happens is I know I'm in the middle of a lesson. Now I have to really pay attention so I don't waste it. What do I mean by that?
Because if you, by wasting it, it means that something has taken place. You know that it's going on, and you're like, yeah, whatever. That means it's going to repeat itself until you say, okay, well, yeah, okay, fine, I don't like it now, I'm going to change it. So you want to take those opportunities. What was going on today was mild in some sense, you know, as far as the world goes. It was just very subtle and mild. That's how people behave. But we know different in that, oh, God, this is just uncomfortable and I don't want to do it.
It's that conscious choice of saying, I know what's happening, and I don't have, you're not blaming.
Right.
You're just choosing not to participate in it.
I know that it's possible not to live in this. That's where I would like to be right now. How can I make that happen?
Yeah, because part of me was saying, why won't I receive? What has caused me? And there was a gentleman, I think it was Trent, that was listening to our show, and we were addressing why, you know, why is it that you want to be an introvert and be away from people? And it's because of that simple process that the energies are there and they're bombarding. It causes you not to receive, even though you're like, my arms are open, what are you talking about? And you're doing everything to receive. But on an energetic level, I understand more because of the experience I went through that would cause me to, why in the hell would I want to receive? Because I'm afraid that next step. Because the other day, so last night, she dropped something on my glass table. It was a knife. And did you see me jump? I'm like, oh my God, I ain't going there. It was not even loud, but it was enough. You had a knife.
Mm-hmm. I'm aware of what was going on. I was not aware of that reaction. That's all.
And I'm like, oh, I ain't going there. I mean, part of me is like, stop, because I don't need that symptom. Mm-hmm. But why would we want to receive? Because that noise came from nowhere, came out of, it's like, why did that happen? And, you know, it didn't even see it coming type of energy. But what's important about this becoming a spiritual human is that you're consciously living life instead of unconsciously living life. When I talk about the subconscious, I like to call it the subconscious, meaning there is another form of consciousness that runs the show. Whereas the unconscious part of you reminds me of that you're just unconscious in a coma. Okay? But unconscious can be referred to as the subconscious. But when I like to use it, I just like to say, are you consciously or unconsciously choosing to be the observer in your world, learning that you can create your reality at any given moment. And when your soul is saying you have to live this out, understand you on another level chose to say, oh yes, I want to be able to see how I'm reacting, how the matrix works, how all this works, so I can resolve to evolve. And we're intentionally learning to evolve, and we're done being in the involution, meaning we're going back or down, descending, we're ascending, we're evolution, we're going back up. And so we do have that conscious choice to be in that moment. And when you are in that moment, just remember that your soul said something happened in the past, whether you rejected a certain behavior, or that you had to be a part of this, or you have to look at it from another lesson, or you need to unlearn something. And majority of the stuff, by the time you get over to age 20, you have to unlearn. And then if you haven't learned particular things, then you'll have to learn. So, you know, there's different stages that a person learns, from the baby to the student to the teacher to the guru. But it's all based on how you create your experiences. I started teaching class, was it yesterday? Mm-hmm. And yes, I knew there was going to be a learning curve. And as we were doing Google Hangouts, some of the students couldn't get on because of the simple fact that something was not coordinatedly right. Now I have to adjust this if I'm going to be the teacher that I want to be, because most of the time it's like an agreed upon value system within myself that said I'm going to honor those that need me. So sometimes 20 people may want to come to class, but because I honor those particular souls, a person will become like, oh, I just wish it was me tonight. And by God, I'll find out afterwards the reason why most of the students come is because somebody had wanted me all to themselves. And it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal when you are used to, wait a minute, these are my results? What's happening? What's going on? I don't mind sometimes being specifically designed to help. But at the same time, you know, I would like to have a little bit of control, and that's my next part of my adventure of why some people couldn't make it on last night was because I was catering to certain energy fields, and maybe certain signatures wouldn't be able to mix into the classroom. Mm-hmm. And if a sensitive area is coming up, then you're not going to want that signature there. So therefore, if you're seriously, intently wanting to come, and other people are wavering, chances are I'm going to link with you, because that is what is in alignment for the progression of the soul to move. You're honoring and serving and moving. So there's signatures that fit and don't fit. So it's like, how do you make this function? How do you do this? Which I'm learning, and I'm learning to respect. And so I never look at who didn't come. I look at who came and honored them, because that is very important. They're the ones that's serious. It's like when somebody asks you a question, they really want to know the answer. Yes. You know? So those students that want it, they really want it. Those that don't want to come, well, why am I wanting them? Because we're brainwashed to think something's wrong with us. We did it wrong.
We should have more people there.
Yeah, and then you're condemning yourself. And I've learned it's about the signatures that come together. What is my service, and how do we move from there? That's why I'm so glad that I'm able to be on Sepia and Blog Talk and have a voice to be able to communicate all the stuff. And here goes my voice. That's just funny. Let's see. Human mindset. The human mindset is when you are just being over identities. We're not blaming. We're not saying it's bad. It is when you separated your whole self into categories, and that you dropped into your left brain, right brain, humanistically illusion, and you're living in it as if that's all there is, and then you are the product of your pain and your sufferings, your programs, and you cannot have a belief without a decision, and you can't have values without beliefs. So there is a chain reaction. So when you're helping a person heal, you have to respect their world, because you've never had their experiences. You know experiences exist, and it's going to be based on their decision of that first time they reacted to a particular situation. Why? So their soul is doing the check mark, going, did you pass the test? Do we need to study anymore in this lifetime? Oh, look at the issue stuck in their face. They didn't react. Hey, check that out. They didn't lose any life force power. Pass! Okay. All right, let's give them another one. Ooh, they just lost 80% of their life force. No, you're going to have to keep working on this. Sorry.
Next time's a bitch slap. Maybe you'll get it.
And so then our job is to help you understand how to be a spiritual human, because we're in that new era of how to integrate the whole self together. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back after this.